I like it. You should. Our family, my
Ross
family
says he
has a whole
really likes
flamingo.
it.
It's
So
very seasonal.
it is.
It is very
We're
seasonal.
ushering
Especially
in
it's gonna be
summer.
like 175 degrees. Yes, he was. The pink flamingo originator, Featherstone was
Showing
born in Berlin, and he's actually buried in
Somewhere on
South.
South Street, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know he's buried here. That's cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
his gravestone actually has flamingos carved into it.
That's really cool. But Lemonster likes to claim it because they
That's-
manufactured
right.
the plastic lawn flamingo there in all their mill buildings. I can't escape the plastic lawn flamingo. I lived in Lemonster when I got this job, and then I moved here. It's following me everywhere I go.
As long as you don't get flamingoed on your front lawn.
Why does it say 5? Oh, I know why it says 5. Okay, I still have 3 minutes.
Hi, stranger.
We are,
I'll say it. How are you?
Scott, we're all up on.
Gene, how are you?
G Keen as well.
All right, Ross is out of town and he called me as I pulled into the parking lot, so I figured I'd take the call, but that cost me like 10 minutes I usually use to set everything up here.
We got you, don't worry.
Luckily, I have a sense of what the agenda is.
Mm-hmm.
We're not allowed to start before we get to the formal time anyway, right?
Correct. You can chit chat, but
Yeah.
that's all you got.
Talk about the lawn flamingo.
We can talk about flamingos. We're gonna talk about how it's gonna go from 4 degrees last week to 90 degrees this week, and
I can't keep up.
the gardens are gonna just,
I'll be
Like,
glad,
right,
I'll be
right.
glad when it stops raining.
yes, on a Saturday.
But yeah,
we
can
are
actually do a few
due
things.
The 13th, probably this Saturday.
This Saturday, the 13th Saturday in a row that it rained. Yes,
It was
it was like
13.
early March was the last Saturday without sort of rain.
I know, I
I
went
feel
from
a
shutting
little
my
more
heat off
bummed
2
out.
weeks ago to putting the air conditioners to prepare for Wednesday when it's 92.
This is a common conversation.
And my husband and my father are very much into the weather.
Do they have things all over their yard?
My dad does. He has thermometers and,
Tim 3D printed
sundials and-
a wind spinny thing.
Oh, that's who he does.
Yeah.
my dad is very much into what we call lawn ornaments. There are plastic. that goes in.
It's
Which-
got some sort of moisture.
Random thoughts?
Random thoughts.
It's
See a
mechanical.
tornado
It's got a
chaser.
place to go down.
I think that's a little bit too much excitement.
That's too
but-
far.
Two pads, one for random thoughts related to this meeting and one for random.
It made
thoughts
me
not
think of
related.
those little things, from the movie Tornado that went up in the air and measured the moisture in the clouds. It's pretty cool.
You saw both, right? Did you
I
see the new one?
Did,
Okay.
which I'm sorry, my heart's with the old one, but it was
Yes,
good.
but I thought the new one was good.
It was
too.
pretty good, yeah.
I think they earned it.
It was too-
Okay, ready?
Ready.
Roll.
Oh, I got 6:29.
Oh, I have 6:30.
Have 6:30,
Oh, apparently my computer is a minute off. Oh, now I got 6:30. Okay,
but yours would be the official
yeah,
computer.
that's right.
I have
Well,
the
they
official
should-
computer.
All be the same.
Yes. We'll sync later on. Let's see, welcome. This is Monday, June 2nd. It is 6:30, where I'm gonna call the Berlin Select Board meeting to order. As I note that this is an open public session, the meeting is being recorded. And so if you say things, your voice, your image, will be recorded. Let's see, we start with the minutes of May 19th.
Make a motion to approve minutes of May 19th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approve the minutes. Is there any general public comment? Well, we're waiting to see if there is, do you want to come to the front and start setting up? Assuming that we don't see a bunch of hands or a rush to the front of the room. We can go on to, department updates.
Good evening,
Building
all.
Commissioner. Hi.
Mr.
It's been quite a few months since the last I've been here, but so as you're all aware, that there is a new ADU, accessory dwelling unit bylaw and actually law. I have had a fair amount of inquiries about that, so I don't want to be surprised if we don't get a handful of these within the next year. Highland Commons has been pretty busy with new stores and stuff. J. Crew just opened. There's a new place that opened as well. They call Playa Bowls. It's a fruit bowl type thing. We have a paper store coming in that's under construction right now. Top Golf, they do golf simulators. They opened a few months back. And we have a Ramen Haven restaurant, which is at where Subway used to be. So that's new up at Highland Commons. There's some talk about another project up there, but I'm not really sure what it is yet, but it's over by where the BJ's is, but that's too early to know what that's going to be. As far as new construction, someone just submitted for a 6-lot subdivision. And I've got a local builder that's working on 4 or 5 A&R lots. So, if all those come through, there's, another 10, 12, 14 houses this year to expect coming through. Now that the weather's getting nice, absent rain, we have gotten pretty busy with a lot of additions and roofing and siding and remodel jobs. So it's the activity's picked up quite a bit in the last month or so.
Where's that 6-lot subdivision going?
It's off of Central Street. It's down by the dog daycare.
Okay. That's the one that's gonna cross the railroad tracks?
Correct, yeah.
And then just the paper store going in is the one that's currently in Hudson and they're moving. Because I went to buy my Father's Day cards, I have the big sign saying that they're moving to Highland Commons area, so. I was worried about how I was gonna choose between the two, which one to go to, so.
That makes more sense now. I
Yeah.
didn't realize how they were moving and why they would have two so close
Right,
together.
why
So
they
that
have
makes
two
a lot
close
more
together.
sense.
And then the Solomon Pond Mall, is there?
We're not getting much activity over there,
Yeah.
so no new tenants within the last probably year.
Okay.
The last one was the Children's Play Center, which I guess they're doing well over there. But as far as anything else, there hasn't really been much going on with the Solomon Pond.
And the Chick-fil-A and its drive-through is in Hudson.
That's in Hudson,
So the
'cause-
meals tax from the Chick-fil-A along with the Panera.
That is correct.
And all go to Hudson and not us.
Yeah,
Even though the trash probably doesn't know what direction to go once you get to the bottom of that
that
road.
is true. By the time they finish eating whatever, if they're gonna throw it out the window, it's gonna be in Berlin.
Yep.
Right, Peg?
Nope.
Yes.
Nope, not gonna happen. Did you get a chance to inspect the bleachers? I know this is.
I did.
But
You got some new aluminum bleachers.
Yeah.
I did take a look at those. They're very nice. The larger one was kind of out of level, so I sent a memo to Kristen and I forget the lady's name on the rec, but
Felicia,
Sure. Yep.
yeah, if they can just level that up, that would be good.
so there's only 2 that are up now.
Well, I noticed 2, but someone said there was 3. I noticed 2. There may have been a third one that I just may not have noticed, but I definitely saw 2 of them.
And no need for concrete pads or anything like
They
that.
don't need concrete pads, but they should be pinned down. They should pin them down. If you get a heavy windstorm and they could blow across the field.
If you're out and about, you may want to check over by the soccer fields or the baseball fields, because I think that's where
The
the
other one
third
might-
one might be, yeah.
Okay.
When Felicia was here, we asked her about moving them. What is your recommendation? Like legit, there's 2 over at the tennis court. Oh, we're gonna have a big soccer day and we want to pick up and move physically.
I don't really see an issue with that.
Okay,
No, they are portable. They're not really substantially large. I think they're only 3 tiers tall. They're meant to be movable.
Okay.
Again, my recommendation though would be to pin them
Anchor 'em.
down.
okay.
Through the chair, I did speak briefly with Fred today. I did connect him up with Felicia, but they have not had a chance to speak yet. I know he did have some concerns about the concrete pad and possible siting of the bleachers. So I do want to make sure that they have a chance to have that conversation. So I
Well,
will be-
especially if they're gonna move them around based on events, you'd be pouring a lot of concrete pads.
That is true. So I do want to make sure that he, is okay with that. So I will be reaching back out to the both of them to make sure they do at least connect and have that conversation.
So there's still just a good number of projects still going on in Berlin, that new growth still, you don't set new growth, I know, but that the projects still are about what we've been seeing the last couple of years.
Yeah, we got quite a few additions, swimming pools, a lot of additions, a good size, you know, the good dollar additions and stuff like that. So the new houses, obviously, we don't get a lot of them because land is scarce. But again, based on these couple of subdivision, what I see coming on with that, wouldn't be doubtful that we don't have 10 or 12 houses this year, which is about what we average. So I think that's going to hold true, the typical average.
So could you go back to the ADUs?
Yes.
You know, I know it was discussed at town meeting, but for those who might be here and there, just, you know, what is it? What's allowed? Where are they allowed? What can you do? What can't you do?
Sure. So the Governor Healy signed into law the Affordable Housing Act, and it allows by right accessory dwelling units up to 900 square feet or half the size of the existing dwelling, whichever is smaller. So what that's doing is it's eliminating the requirement of a special permit through the town, where in the past we allowed in-law apartments, but that was a special permit. So you'd have to come and apply for a special permit. They were typically good for 5 years. So this new law allows them by right, again, up to 900 square feet. So it's a zoning exemption. And but you still have to comply with all building codes, sanitary codes, setback to lot lines, area coverage and stuff like that. So the only thing it's really doing is it's making it an allowed use by right versus a special permit. Unlike an in-law apartment, that these can be rented to anybody. The property does not have to be owner occupied any longer. That was a requirement of the past bylaw with in-law apartment, that the property had to be owner occupied and that the accessory dwelling unit was to some form of relation. Those requirements are gone. So you don't have to reside in the house or the apartment. You can rent both out to anybody, to open market, whatever you want to do. Again, as long as you don't exceed that 900 square feet or half the size of the existing dwelling.
So what would be, since Berlin is all, you know, private sewer, private well, what would be that?
They still have to comply with Board of Health regulations. So the Board of Health will look at the number of bedrooms total of the existing house and any proposed bedroom within the accessory dwelling unit as well. And if you exceed the design limits of the system that's there now, they'd have to expand their system.
So you had mentioned that you can rent them out. Is there the possibility of people turning these into Airbnbs?
That is prohibited. That was one thing that was prohibited, is that you cannot use them for short-term rentals.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah, it was implemented to address the housing crisis.
correct. Okay. And you've had quite a few inquiries, or just?
Oh,
hey, I
yeah,
got
half a dozen.
questions? Really?
I have one individual that owns several houses, and he's thinking about doing one in every house he has.
Okay. I'm good. Thank you for that. It's always just nice to have
Yep.
more knowledge when we whiz around abbreviations of things and people have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if anybody has any questions, they can always give me a call, and I've been to quite a few trainings on this, so I think I'm pretty adverse on it at this point. It's been really beat into me at this point, so it's.
Since accessory dwelling units are relatively new, anyone who pulled a building permit for one of those would make the building permit logs, the monthly
Correct.
logs, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a way to just like highlight the lines for those so we can get a sense just quickly.
Well, the interesting thing to that point, Scott, is that is a requirement of the building department, is that we're supposed to report to the state.
Right,
Anybody that applies and obtains a permit for one.
Okay.
So the state hasn't officially notified us how we're supposed to
Right.
report to the state. But they are requiring that we report how many we issue, because they want to keep track of them to
Yeah.
find out, is this working? Are we getting too many, not enough, whatever the case may be. So the state is going to be looking for reporting from building departments, but until they give us a mechanism, I don't know how we're going to do that.
yeah, I work for an agency, we get state contracts all the time that have reporting requirements, but they won't tell you how or
How?
when until you're halfway through, We're like, oh.
Oh, you were supposed to have been doing this
But
for the last 6
exactly,
months.
6
Yeah.
months, yeah. And so I don't feel I don't want to create another system, but there's just a way to just regularly let us know. There's like, just the number. I don't need to know addresses and other stuff, but
So what I will do is, if we do end up having them, I will break that out separately on my annual report.
okay,
So you'll see new dwellings, you'll see accessory dwelling units,
Okay.
so that'll be a new category created.
good. Other questions?
I'm good.
Good.
I just wanted to thank you and Leanne for your help with the housing choice designation.
No, no
grant
problem.
thing that-
Anytime.
Hopeful. Well, then, thank you.
It was good to see you all.
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you, Mr.
Yes.
Hanks.
Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you. I can go home.
Have a
We'll get
good
there.
night.
Scott's in charge now. We'll be out of here by 7:10.
I only put, what is it, A through N on the agenda tonight.
I
so.
know, no, but they're quick.
Town administrator report.
All right, two quick things before I go into the report. I will be on a stay / a little bit away vacation from June 23rd to June 30th. I will be here for most of it. But the tail end weekend, I will be in New York, but I'm still available by phone, email, just visiting
Mhm.
family, not doing anything too exciting or crazy. But it's one of our summer weeks we have as well, so very much
Good.
looking forward to it. And I've also received an email from Brian Stevens asking if it would be possible to meet with myself and a select board member before the 9th of June. And so I'm looking at either Wednesday or Thursday afternoon this week. I don't know if one of you might be available to join me. Chris Keefe had previously handled this, so I'm not sure who would like to kind of pick up that ball.
I happen to be in Maine on Wednesday and Thursday, so that will rule me out.
And I planned on going to the civics fair up at Tohoto Civil Action Fair, so that's Wednesday.
Would you like
I
to
am
join me?
available. I'm
By
in general
default.
gonna be probably more available than they are during the day, so just so you're aware, I can handle what you need
If it's,
during the day.
yeah, if it ends up late enough on Thursday, I'll be back at some point Thursday afternoon, but I don't know what time.
Okay, yeah, and I'm not sure. I asked for specific times.
Yep.
Those were the times that seemed
Yep.
to work, or windows that seemed to work. So
Yeah,
as soon as I
will let you
nail
know
it down.
if there's anything. I don't think there is.
Perfect, okay. Thank you. And some grant updates. Fred and I are working with the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, as you're aware, on the Community One Stop grant for the remaining funding needed to replace the South Street Bridge. We did get an updated cost estimate today. It has actually gone up to about 1.36 million now because everything is escalating cost-wise. However, the good news is we have put in for the $500,000 small bridge grant, which we hope to hear about any day now, literally. And the remaining funding, we are allowed to ask for up to $1 million from the Rural Development Grant Fund. So we do certainly have enough to cover that request should it be awarded. So we are working on that. Many thanks to the Central Mass Regional Planning Commission, and our legislative representatives have provided letters of support, as well as we have been coordinating with Ann Goby, the rural Director of Rural Development, I believe her title is, for the governor's office. I know that COA Director Melissa Sargent and PEG are working on a grant application for some various accessibility upgrades to town-owned buildings, looking mostly at municipal offices and the library, along with accessible voting booths. Try to say that one 3 times fast. Also just looking at door, bathroom, parking, and pathway conditions at those buildings. Energy Committee Chair Tim Wysocki and myself had an introductory call with Omid Madavi, who is the town's new energy fellow. It's actually starting today, is the first day of the internship. And he will be working with us for up to, or fellowship, he'll be working with us for up to 20 hours per week this summer. Tomorrow, the 3 of us will attend the National Grid Energy Summit at Holy Cross, which looking forward to. We also get a credit 10% credit towards future energy initiative projects for attending that. And the topics look actually really fascinating. Tim was texting me last year feverishly, telling me about all the exciting things, and I really wish that I had been there. So I'm excited to go. There's no cost to attending the event. And on Wednesday, Omid will be here. Tim and I will kind of walk him through some of the facilities and buildings, in addition to the priorities for the fellowship. And finally, I met with June Miller and Tim Wheeler looking at the procurement for the historical clothing accessioning consultant, because it is over $10,000 that they were awarded. So looking at different options for that. One of the options discussed was perhaps cutting back the number of days and allocating a little bit more funding to some of the materials and keeping it under the $10,000 threshold, because this is a local consultant who comes highly recommended at a very reasonable price, and pretty much everybody else is out of state. So they're in the process of kind of exploring what their options are there. Public safety upstairs renovation project continues to run ahead of schedule, which is great. The accessible showers have been purchased and nearly all of the framing for the space is complete. We also did receive a inquiry literally about 2 days after the legislators came to visit about what would we like to look for FY26 earmarks. And that project seemed to make the most sense. We did request $100,000 for purchase and installation of the fire pole that the department is looking to have that would go down into the bays. It is allowed and insurable. So I did check that just to make sure, and people are still using them. Although I learned in California, they use slides. So it's a different kind of world. A fire pole is obviously preferable, although we'll check on the slide for you, Peg. We'll let you know. And then up to $100,000 to furnish the space, including the purchase and installation of appliances needed for the commercial kitchen that they would like to install up there. And the visual design students at Assabet have put together a really fantastic 25-minute video that showcases the project with a real focus on the students and what they're doing. It can be viewed. I do have the address, although it looks like there's a rogue period in there possibly in the link, but it is on YouTube and it is called Nailed It. It is a series of shows they're putting together. This one is specific to the Berlin project, and you can look that up on YouTube, or if you can't find it, let me know and I'd be happy to get you the link. Beginning June 2nd, paving will begin on sections of Linden Street and Crosby Road. Work will generally take place between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. on weekdays. Residents, buses, postal carriers, and public safety vehicles will be guided through the work zone by the highway department with minor delays, but we are asking those who are just driving through to please seek alternate routes during this work. Unfortunately, we are having issues with the new flooring tiles starting to peel up already down in the public safety complex. I have tried 3 times by email and phone call to get the contractor to come in and fix the flooring under warranty. And as he has not, we had legal counsel send basically a demand letter to fix the flooring. So I will keep you posted on that matter. Also working on procurement with the library director for the shelving and other items for the interior renovations that were approved at town meeting, that little switch in that old funding article that had previously been used for design of a new library that they will now be using for interior renovations. And as you had mentioned earlier, all board members should have received an invite to the Chick-fil-A grand opening. And please check your email. If you haven't received it, let me know, and RSVP if interested. We have received the resignations of Conservation Agent Maddie Vandenboom and CPA Admin Maureen Adema. We do wish them best of luck in all of their future endeavors, and we have reposted both of those positions out there, job ads, same exact positions, no changes to either one. I also wanted to put in some of the upcoming projects because there is quite a growing laundry list of items that are out there. The first being working on the demolition of the former fire and rescue building, working with the recreation committee on the South Commons playground and the pavilion. Highway needs to put out a bid for line painting for several roads in town. Also, the duct work for the HVAC portion of the upstairs renovation project needs to go out to bid so that work can begin in the fall. That is something Assabet cannot do. So we knew this, and we have minimized the duct work to the extent that we can, but there is still some that will need to be done. Also working with Austin Designs on the town hall stair renovation project that the board put forward for CPA funding that was approved effective July 1. Continuing work on the town center project, which seems to grow as we get into it with the road, sidewalk, and pedestrian access, Bullard House, 1870 drainage, and looking at the sewer, and the Bullard House repairs. Also closing out all of the other ARPA projects as we are now down to just over 1.5 years to get everything complete. And I certainly do not want to wait till the last minute to be doing that. All funding, as you're aware, is obligated. So we are not at risk for losing that funding, but now we just need to finish the projects. And then continuing to review and update select board policies and also working on redacting and releasing those executive session minutes that we talked about last time. And that's all I have for you.
Just a note, it's not Linden and Crosby, it's Lyman
Oh,
and
shoot.
Crosby.
Did I put Linden in there? I did.
They
Thank
got a
you.
lot done today. That
They
was-
got a huge lot done. All of Crosby is stripped
Yeah.
and Lyman, as far as it can go, is stripped. Do you think that it would slow cars down? No, I'm closing all the windows in my house. That's last. But I've saw Fred a few times today, saw a few other folks from his team there today, so. They're moving and a shaking. Hopefully it won't be until the 20th if the weather cooperates and they can get it down and done.
Comments or questions?
That's it.
Oh.
That was mine.
Sorry, then I'm the only one on the list, huh?
Mhm.
The fire truck is still sitting out there from the 1940s or 50s. Do we know when that old truck is
Oh.
going away?
Let me talk to the chief.
Oh, what about the other truck?
Yeah.
That's still in old fire.
Is the truck in old fire still? I
Yeah.
thought that's the one they pulled out and sitting
They
in the backyard.
pulled one out from the bottom from rescue and there's one on the other side in old fire.
You have two?
Yeah, one's
Not.
One's
a
not,
which
yeah.
is older. But,
Yep.
Yeah, at some point, because I think the last conversation we had was along the lines of they were looking and someone was going to grab it, but at some point, I think there's if it's not gone by X date, we just put it on municipal bid, which would be sad, because I think there are people in town who would love to have it and
Mhm.
do something with it. I just sitting outside and rusting.
Yeah.
And also too, if you're moving forward with getting the quotes in place,
Right.
Are those buildings totally cleaned out?
That I will have to look into as well.
I thought some significant progress had been made, but I don't know if you're right. It never got finished because it wasn't the building's coming down on Tuesday.
Correct.
Anything in it's going with it when it comes down.
I think Old Rescue, last time I looked in Old Rescue, it was gnarly. It had furniture in it and then a lot of fire stuff, like the poles for the lights. That fire Michael need to find a home for.
In terms of municipal, we are looking at, or we did actually look at an alternative. It's called Garage.
Mhm.
And they actually work municipality to municipality. Not solely, but looks like you can get typically a better price. So we were working on getting an account set up for that, so we could put things on there like equipment, old vehicles, et cetera. So I will follow up with Chief about that too, because that was kind of where we left it. I think it got a little bit lost in budget season,
Yeah.
but we'll get back to it.
Are
Um,
there any like historical places like Old Sturbridge Village where you could donate with a nice little plaque that says?
Well, Old Silver is 1850.
Well, I know that, but like that idea of something.
So we would have to donate it to a municipality, or we would have to put it out for public auction.
Okay.
That's the only tough part.
Right,
If we could
right.
do it to a quasi even municipality, like not that the housing authority would want it, but I'm just trying to think of an example of a quasi. Just put a fire truck right in front of your building. But yeah, otherwise we do have to make it publicly available since
Yeah.
it was originally purchased with town-owned funds.
But it's also even if it did a
Or
public
auction.
auction and you had a
Yeah.
person you encouraged to be there
Yes.
Mm,
and the bridge,
yes.
South Sea Bridge. So the timing for that second grant is when?
It is due June 5th, and I know I had
Okay.
the date and it's escaping me now when they will
Just
be.
trying to get a sense of like, if everything went well from here on out and it's not gone well at any stage of this, when would the bridge construction start and be done?
So the timeline, the anticipated notices of award are October 2025. So you'd be talking a
great,
spring
right.
26
Yep.
project. It is fully designed.
Yep.
We are just waiting for the funding. Unfortunately, the original quote that came in
Right.
before the project was designed was just over $500,000 back in it's before me, so it must have been either 21 or 22, and that has escalated
Yeah.
as not only the design, but also, I mean, not just inflationary
Right.
costs, but also that's more in depth once you get into design and see
Yep.
what it entails.
So likely summer of 26 before it is. done.
Yes, and fingers crossed that we get the grant. We do have a lot of support behind it, so I'm hopeful, but again, there's no guarantee.
Yep.
Otherwise, we'll have to explore other avenues. I know Chapter 90 is a potential other avenue for funding, but that would then take away from other road projects that need to be done.
There's a flagpole in the center of town that every time they raise and lower flags, we rip flags.
I
Yeah.
have asked the church, they are not interested.
Well, can we then just take it down, the pole itself? I mean, if no one else
Sure.
wants it, having a pole that's not near any municipal building that damages flags as we raise and lower them seems to be more effort and cost than it is worth. I wouldn't do it based on just me saying.
No,
something
no,
this
no,
week. I
I'm
think
just-
we'd have to, if you do some more research on that, and we'll put it on a future agenda about whether or not we as select board just want it gone.
It is
Or-
not on our property, so that's part of the issue of removal as well. We'd have to
Right.
figure that out. I can do some
Okay.
looking into it and bring it back.
On
The
church
whole,
property?
right, we own things on other people's property is
Yes,
a
like the
whole
clock.
entangling that I would like to continue working down that path that. Like if
I
if they don't want
disentangle
it,
it,
then let
yes.
us take our property back. If you want us to take our property
Yeah.
back, then it belongs to you then.
And if we can't take it down, then we need to fix it so it doesn't rip
Right,
flags.
right. Because it's taking a bunch of highway time to every time it does that, and
Mhm.
I'd like to
Yes.
reduce that time. That Assabet video, I was thinking, could highway and fire post it on their various social media platforms?
I can
Just
certainly
it's their
ask.
sort of project, and I think finding other places to post it it's sort of formal stuff, I think would be great. I think I'll save that one for a little bit later. Okay. If there's not any questions, we'll get into business items. We have, if you noticed, we've combined old business and new business just because sometimes there's a not clear delineation between the two, and so it's just business now.
Got it.
Doesn't mean we can't change that at some point in the past, but I think old business, new business is a vestige of Robert's Rule of Order that we do sort of follow, but I think it makes the meetings go better. So discuss or disclose an exemption for the fire chief to attend the Fire Chiefs Summit in Florida.
So we did discuss this at the last meeting when the chief was here. He is away, but in the meantime, he has received a determination from state ethics, that a vote on disclosure for travel expenses serving a legitimate public purpose is required by the select board. He has filed this disclosure. It is in your packet. It does require a vote to either a vote to accept the travel expenses because it serves a legitimate public purpose, and that public purpose outweighs any special non-work related benefit to the employee or person providing the travel expenses, and then it requires a signature by the chair.
So moved.
Okay, I was gonna say, do you have that written down?
It is, it's actually in the box on the form.
Second.
Is there any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm not that good off the top of my head.
Town storage needs. Peg, you're the one who's sort of
Yes.
led that sort of effort.
Yeah, so the storage tour is officially done. There were several departments that did not respond, so to me, lack of participation means acceptance and you don't need anything.
Mhm.
There are a couple departments, Board of Health and assessors, who are looking for another file cabinet, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking if you clean out the ones that you already have, perhaps you don't need them. I know, or they may legit.
Sometimes you
know.
can't get rid of
Yeah.
stuff.
So, Kristen, if you know of any, talk to Ken or Michael, see if there's any storage cabinets around. Both of them would like one. And the only big one that I kind of knew all along that really needs space is rec. They're looking for a 10 by 10 space. Much of their supplies are already in plastic boxes, but those plastic boxes are at people's homes, at people's businesses, not easily accessible. When they're needed, just this past week, Felicia, the current head of rec needed to contact Dee to contact Mike to get into 1870 to see if she could find something in there for one of their school events. So took up Mike's time. I'm thinking and would like to propose that at the town hall, if you look at where the town hall manager supposedly had an office,
Mhm.
there's a lock on it now. And I'm thinking, so your supplies are going to be locked up, so no one can just go, ooh, looky, and take it away. That room, there might be a desk in there that might need to be moved out,
Files. Yeah,
but that might be a perfect spot for them and them alone. Because they do use supplies that they replenish. They've got costumes that they're still, working with people in town who need them to get rid of. There's like a popcorn machine that they have for different events. So I'm thinking that one space might be just enough to put it, lock it. The 3 current ladies have access to it. And we're done.
yeah, Sandra and I had already talked about the possibility of clearing that office and using it to create space. She's not currently using it. Working remotely works better with a cell phone than the occasionally and spotty internet at
Correct.
the town hall. So let's talk to Michael and see what we can do over there. I didn't catch the storage cabinets. Which departments needed that?
Board of Health and the assessors.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that even if they have a retention period, the amount of new documents created every year probably exceed the amount of old documents that get destroyed. And you're right, some
Yeah.
documents.
Yeah, you have to
You
keep.
keep even longer than that, yeah.
And truly, like the document retention, we don't do that very well
Right.
in the building
Right.
in general.
Because they had talked about, oh, we'll just get a box and we'll put it on top of a file cabinet, and then we'll just get another box and put it on top of that. And I'm like,
Falls on
It's
someone,
not
yeah.
hard, but somebody has to go through every single document.
Right.
But if anybody wants to do that, or if we have a workup person who wants to do that,
Yeah, that's
the process is not hard.
mhm,
Because when I oversaw medical records, which is also one of those places, was usually tags you put on, that like this will get destroyed in 2036.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so each tag had a color, so it was easy then to, in the first of the year, you know what color's going away, and you have someone go through and take out all those
Yeah.
colors and.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff here, you actually have to ask permission
That
from
RMU
someone
too, yeah.
to get rid of things,
Yeah.
so you have to sort of generally know what
Right.
you're gonna toss.
mhm. So that's really it for the storage
Right, 'cause
report.
even if it's a senior workup, they're working with the department, because you're right, you don't want someone,
Do you want someone?
Just
Tossing
eeny
stuff,
meeny
yeah.
going, oh, this looks old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or I don't know.
It's
what this
helpful
does, we
if
should try it.
it's somebody who used to be on the
Right,
board or
right.
used to be, yeah. Or at least has a familiarity with.
mhm. But then that's really it for the storage tour. As I said, everyone was contacted, with the exception of historical, because they already have multiple spots, so I
Right.
skipped over them and went to everybody.
And so, highway has all their vehicles and lights and bleachers and generators and.
Just scattered around,
Right.
no doubt.
It might make sense at some point too for rec to look at maybe a CPA funds for a shed or something that's actually down there. I feel like that might be
Okay,
because it would make sense for their stuff to be down where they use it.
correct,
Right.
instead of running in and out trying to get them.
Yeah.
Rec is meeting, next week,
And
so
it's
I can
not, I
bring it
mean,
up.
a shed is not
Right,
expensive,
Right.
Right.
so I feel like that might be
Okay,
because if it's 10 by 10, that's the stuff you could get at a large hardware store, or there's several
Yeah.
local vendors that make them that are structurally decent.
mhm,
You don't have to lug it around.
okay.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, I'll make that recommendation to them when I meet with them in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
But honestly, they're the only ones who have
Good.
large needs, so done.
So that means there was like no one screaming that they really wanted to use the old highway barn,
No, sir.
or that they needed to store things in the Legion Hall on Lincoln Street.
And you
Or
are correct.
in either of the 2 buildings we're about to tear down.
You are
Good
correct.
thinking.
So we go back to talking about buildings and which ones we keep and go away.
Yeah.
We
Yep.
have this to inform us.
Mhm.
Thank you.
June 23rd. Is our next scheduled meeting. There was some talk about moving it up a week. But there is a public hearing already advertised for that date and time that we'd have a problem moving. It is the cable access. I was about to say the name of a different cable company. Charter is gonna come in. To start at 6 that night, do some business before the 6:30 hearing, do this from that. Is 6 something?
And earlier.
Okay.
At-
I was gonna
After.
I was gonna say, I think I'm the one who has the hardest time with the 6 o'clock meeting. Doing that, so I'll just schedule it so the meeting on June 23rd will start at 6.
Appreciate
Do we have fiscal year 25 line item
you. They are in the drive and I can walk you through them if you bring them up. Just closed out of my thing by mistake. Okay. First one is a transfer for fire EMS. It is a request for $25,000 from full wages to fire and EMS expenses. And is to cover end of the year expenses for vehicle repairs, uniforms, record management software, steps and equipment. And the reason that we do not have funding is due to the unanticipated vehicle repairs and equipment failures, plus the ALS chief has talked about several times since he's been here, and we have to pay for that mutual aid service.
Are there questions?
No, documentation looks good. Oh. Mm-hmm.
It was also voted on last Wednesday at the Finance Committee.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. The next two both have to do with police wages. The first is a transfer from our expenses. Most of this was anticipated. We had parked funds negotiating the union contract. So we are now asking to move a little bit more than anticipated, but we're asking dollars from that line item into the police wages, full and part-time. We had 15 weeks of being short-staffed due to IOD. A couple of other matters. We had some
IOD is,
injured on duty.
yes,
Over. We had some double time payout for holidays. And we had lost and new ones coming in that had higher degrees that required additional pay requirements of the union contract. That's something we really couldn't anticipate for. As much as I would love to potential educational stipends, we don't have that luxury.
is there enough money? 26 budget to cover?
There is, that's why there was $180,000 increase.
Since they're both police wages, the other one?
The other one is animal control officer expenses. We had initially thought going into the animal control service that fell through. So unfortunately, we could not touch that fund expense line item. So the wages have been being paid out of police wages. So we are for $21,000 from the animal control officer expense line item, which can police wages, full-time and part-time.
My only question on that one is, obviously, this was just.
Oh,
cut
that
and
didn't get
paste.
copied over. Yep.
It got copied over, so if you could get rid of that.
Sure.
Because it talks about animal control officer expense and then short staff. If you could clean it.
Motion to approve both with the changes that Peg requested.
All in favor? Aye.
And just on that, her wages amount to approximately $12,000. And so part to cover that additional gap that we have in the PD wages, which I believe is why same, but it doesn't address the animal control. So I will add that to it so that it's clear.
E, the appointment of Alexander to the Conservation Commission. Whoops. We jumped ahead.
Oh,
The appointment to the Conservation Commission?
yes, so we from the chair, we received a resignation from Luis Janda, and so they are not short at their next meeting, which occurs.
Wednesday.
They asked if you would make an appointment of Alexandra Rogalinsky and as a full member.
I mean, I go to the Concom meetings and Lexi doing research, part of cleanup, part of various activities. So I think that she'd be a great voting member to.
Yeah, Carolyn seemed very happy with the choice, so.
Yeah. You want to make the motion since you put a Concom?
I will make a motion to appoint Alexandra Rogalinsky. Commission.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Right. Let's see, fiscal year meeting calendar.
All right, Dee has put together a lovely. And then I went through and messed some of it up on her because that's what I do. This and see if you have any suggested dates that do not work. It is beautifully color coded, which I
Yes.
love. So for FY 26 meeting dates. If you look at March, we may or may not meet
Yeah.
every Monday, but we did this past year. So
Mhm.
we just put in every Monday.
Are we only going to have one coffee talk, which I think change the name of that to like pre-town meeting?
We can didn't have dates or
Okay.
Right,
times for the other ones, so we can talk about that and
As
add those
needed.
in.
yeah. Fall town meeting, we'd also do one for that one too,
Correct.
and if we thought there were other stuff coming up.
Mhm.
So we'll add that in because we'll have a date for
Right.
fall town meeting at the next meeting.
I like the symmetry of this calendar. I happen to be out of town in 4 of the dates. But I think we'll look at that more when we get closer to them, whether or not it's worthy meeting or holding the meeting without me. All 3 are, I think, viable options when those happen.
Will change right now, like 5-week months, that it would just be
No,
simple enough? No,
no.
okay.
The hardest one is I am gone from the 15th of October to the 4th of November, and so that's,
And Columbus Day is
He's trying
smack
to
in the
get you
middle there.
covered.
yeah, right.
We got it.
you said that you're gone 15th of October to when?
Officially, I might be back on the 3rd. We don't have the air flights yet. They're the package company is, since we are in Asia and arrive, we leave at 8 o'clock. Even with time zones, I still don't think I can get here in time for a meeting, so
Oh, you'd be fun to talk to.
that would be fun to talk to. Having not done anything town related for 3 weeks, I'm just
Yeah,
jumping
his
right
director
in.
would be like, so Scott.
Yeah.
Tell me.
Piper and I are looking at October too, but we will
Yeah.
keep in mind that that's.
Yeah, so it's not an open meeting law violation for me to like send my vacation schedule. So if other people are looking at them,
Schedule that we can discuss.
yep. And if we keep efficient meetings like this, there might be some months we only have 1 meeting, so. I think we need a vote on this, right? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye. Nice job, Dee. Well done.
Thanks.
I received an email from someone asking why our fiscal year 26 yet, and I assured them that we were voting on it tonight, and it would be online
Okay.
afterwards.
Had one other meeting since the election,
Right.
so we don't want to set that without our new
Yeah,
member.
yeah. Yeah, and I don't think legally we had to do it before, even we could do it at the next meeting if we really wanted to. Next, furniture donation from Bell Valley What Bell Value Added Fund 7?
It's an odd name. You're familiar with where the Whole Foods is in Shrewsbury? It is the luxury apartment buildings that plaza. And this is another one that's many thanks to Dee for going through this. The manager is a Berlin resident. The properties are 8 years old and they are updating is the furniture that they spent over $150,000 on in their common areas. Does when one has a luxury apartment building. Some of this furniture like never ever been used and they thought of us, which we're extremely grateful for. You look in your file online, some of the uses for listed like the library. There is a absolutely beautiful Eats 12 that could go upstairs in the new public safety area. Couches, chairs, end tables. It's really tables. Pretty fantastic, everything they're willing to give. And the estimated value of the furniture that we are interested in taking is approximately $10,000. That is a donation. Donations due needs to be accepted by the board under MGL Chapter 34.
And again, all the furniture you're thinking of accepting use here in town, a specific department says we want that and we have a place to put it.
Yes. And we listed the department names next to the photos, so that way you have an idea.
I noted these did not have a thing.
Oh.
Those
Those are mine.
are yours, okay.
Oh, did you want them? Or something?
If there are, often thought it would be very nice to have people have a nice spot out in the lobby there in front of it and fill things out, because right now it's only the bench, which is really uncomfortable, especially sort of
That
Challenge.
is a great idea.
They're actually chair set that I was thinking of putting in that area.
okay, I think it would be really super
Absolutely.
helpful.
Of those chairs, actually, if you jump to the third page, I think believe they're in there, not labeled either. Too, but we could certainly
So
make it
just
work.
keep that in mind as a.
Absolutely. I think it's the whole idea too is COA, second floor reno around the town offices, really try to make the space a little more welcoming. It's a really good point to give a comfortable place for people to sit.
In the lobby downstairs.
Yep.
Things that they're replacing or whatever, one in, one out would be awesome.
Yes, we are not in the business of storing either nice junky things, so we will keep an eye to that.
Tours of existing buildings. All junky things, right?
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, if we're replacing, we
Yes,
don't
yeah.
want this item.
And the room of requirement downstairs, my understanding is that is quite full. There's a room where all things disappear to down in the basement. I don't know if you knew.
Anyone
Call
refer to it as
we
that's
call it the
amazing.
room of requirement.
Yes.
because
Depending on what you need, you
the
can fit it
Potter
in there.
Right.
reference. I gave things to Ken this summer and they just disappeared into this room. So the room is
So we have a
So-
portal. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
It's a room of holding.
It's a black hole.
I think this is great. I think it continues that there's this town have, and that residents like this coming forward, thinking of the town, say dollars is just a great thing. Again, my only concern, of which all of us, I think all taking anything just because someone's donated, there actually is a use here in town that will benefit from it. I think it's great.
Should
And-
make a
and-
nice Powder House News article
Yep.
in the show.
This is very high-end furniture. I know you
Yep.
can't see it if you're watching online or in the audience, but in excellent
Yeah.
condition. I find that, or well, I guess a lot of common spaces, so a lot of it is virtually unused, and this is coming from many thanks to Jennifer Grant, who is the community manager of that
Yeah.
apartment.
Brighter.
Mhm,
Yes.
Or in the company as well.
mhm.
Motion?
Motion to accept the furniture.
Seconded?
Seeing no more discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And for at River Ridge Liquors,
Interesting one.
they're all interesting. today.
Yes, I haven't actually received one of these. But the Mass State Lottery is offering a Keno monitor. At the well, it's River Bridge Liquors, but it's also the sandwich shop. So I envisioning it in the actual liquor store, but in the sandwich shop where there is seating. The board only needs to respond if the board objects to the business receiving a Keno monitor. So we did just receive this, actually, I think it was on Thursday, Wednesday or Thursday.
And that also means Keno sales, because it says they're estimating some revenue from it, so there'll be some sales to go with this.
That is correct. My understanding is it's only if we object to the display, which
Right.
is a little bit interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like they already sell them, correct? And this just shows the number.
Right.
That I would have to check.
I had
Yeah.
to go look,
Oh,
So
okay.
it's, so it's like the giant TV with the numbers.
Yeah.
yeah, so it's just a screen.
Yeah.
Right.
So yes, there is a Mass General law that if the lottery intends to install a monitor, the board can protest should they so desire to.
Of the overarching state. Is there any objections?
No,
Then we can just move on to the next one without comment. File a 5-member board bylaw petition with the state legislature.
This one is quite simple as well. This is identical to the recall bylaw petition in that town meeting authorized the select board to petition the general courts for the special legislation needed to make the select board a 5-member board. The select board subsequently needs to vote to file that petition with the legislature. And so we are asking for your vote to authorize us to file that.
Which is always like, because we're the ones who put it on the
Mhm.
agenda and argued for it on the floor of town meeting. But now we have to make sure we really mean it.
It's true. We didn't change our minds.
and we absolutely need to send this on to the legislature.
Yes, we do. I have confirmed that with town council.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, because anytime you do this, that's.
Yeah. Time.
Yes, it does. And like the recall bylaw, we are still waiting.
It's still in
It's still in
process, yes.
process, and that was submitted back in either late
Maybe they
December
can
or early
amend that
January.
to say, and increase the
Maybe.
select board to 5.
Doing budget now, so,
Right? That'd be nice to tack.
Staple them together.
Is there a motion?
motion to file the petition.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
So should we start going to like Lancaster and Sterling, their meetings, make an appointment with them and be like, hey, what did you do? What was your process?
I'm not sure there's much other than you put it on the ballot and you decide 2 and 3-year terms.
I was gonna say,
I don't know that there's much.
I
that
think
you
once
do.
it passes the legislature, it's just up to us deciding how we want to run the next election that it would take effect at. I mean, like my bias in some respects would be, I wouldn't want to see. I'd love to be select board with as many people running as possible and like the top X number of people. The top person gets a 3-year term, the next person gets a 2-year term, and the
That's
third
what they
person gets a
did.
1-year term.
That's what they
Yeah.
did
Just-
to fill the seats.
Cause I think it'd just be too confusing to have 3 separate select board races and who's running against 2, and then it's all the politics of like, which one am I running against? Oh, you know,
Correct.
that one of the existing is
So
running
it's
for
just like-
reelection for this one, so I'm gonna run for this one
Yeah.
over here, and like, no, just put them all
Like
over.
city council is
Yep.
normally.
Yep.
So I don't think, I mean, procedurally, we'd be the same, correct?
Right. And my guess is they won't get this in place for 2026 or probably 2027 by
Yeah.
the time we.
I mean, I know that Lancaster and Sterling were doing this dance for years to get it going, even though it was a citizen's petition. Because they
Yeah.
had done surveys, what are you looking for, projects, just to try and garner interest among the community, be like, ooh, I got 2 more seats.
So
We can talk about it when we get closer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should talk about it a lot,
Yeah.
but.
Okay.
um,
Nothing to do
Yeah.
right now, just file it, and get it going.
Yep.
if we had a charter, or we were using this to build a charter, you know, you would do a proposed amendment, but in this case, it is just a special act of the legislature, so after the town meeting approval, then it will require, the special act, basically, it's very similar to, I believe, when you did the town administrator special act of legislation to do. And what's interesting is it doesn't, I will have to check this because it doesn't actually specifically outline how you lay out the terms. So I don't know if that has to be in there, which it wasn't, or does that get decided after? So I will look
Right.
into that.
Well, and we should probably keep an eye as we go through all the policies where it mentions 3-member board, flag them, put them on a sticky somewhere so
Right.
that, you know, when we do go to 5, it's an
Right.
easy cut
Right.
and paste.
And I think we're thinking that we're just adding, in other words, we're not changing us to like suddenly 2-year terms or 5-year
Mm-mm.
terms, or
Right.
it's just, we're adding more of us.
Mhm.
And we'll get a nice new big table too, so, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
Discuss select board automatic email response. Do you wanna, this was your thought?
It was.
Yep.
I know that in my previous position, it was really helpful to have a response that went out from the main email box. It sort of sets expectations, it provides a prompt acknowledgement. It just,
Mhm.
it's, then your email doesn't feel like it's going into a black hole, and they understand how that, like for us specifically, they understand how that box works. For my past job, it was like, well, you can send it here, but if you need somebody quickly, this is not the place to go.
Mhm.
So I think that might be helpful in that box. And I've only been here for a few minutes again, but that was my initial
Yep,
sort of feeling, was that might be
Well-
a helpful thing.
I mean, it's true, because when an email comes in, I can imagine the 3 of us going.
oh yeah, we all start to respond, and we're like, oh,
Yeah.
let's respond, because we'll get in trouble.
Right.
And frankly, I've probably, in my time here, have only responded probably to a half dozen of them, and every one of them got me in trouble, because I responded just to the person directly, and say, you know, I can't do this to the bigger group because of that, and then they reply back and put everybody back in it, and we've now started a conversation about a non-agenda item outside of a meeting, and so, and then it takes someone like, you know, Chris, and say, well, now you include all of them again, no one's gonna respond anymore, you know, and in a much nicer way than I just said it that way, but for people to say that, because we did get one recently where someone emailed something in, and
That's correct.
I didn't see in that particular email a question that required a response, but then followed up saying I didn't get a response, and so.
Right.
Yeah.
That
uh,
was my sort
Yep.
of concern is that I typically respond right away to those emails and blind copy the board so that
Right.
you know that there has been a response that has been sent out, and that way everybody's on the same page without violating open
Yep.
meeting law. That one in particular, I same thing, I didn't see it as having a question, I saw it as feedback, and so
Right,
you know, in that case, going forward, I will at least respond and say, thank you very much for I can say, thank you for your email. We have received your feedback. We will take it into consideration. We appreciate your, you know, your thoughts. Well, I mean, we
But-
could certainly do this too, but you guys can legitimately reply individually. The problem is then if you're replying, I'm replying, and we're all perhaps sending slightly different things, then it gets a little convoluted too.
I think that's less of a problem that when they reply back, they then
They
send,
put
you
everybody
know,
back on.
Lisa's response to me and Peg's response to me and Lisa, and then suddenly we've again had a
Yeah.
conversation that none of us were planning on having.
Yeah, I feel like that box,
yeah.
the way that operates, it really is something that is
Yep.
Mhm.
more informational for us, and that typically you would be responding. And you shouldn't have to necessarily respond instantaneously if
Right,
there is an auto response on it. It gives you a moment to do a few
Right.
things and pause if you need to.
well, and I like the autoresponder because I think in it, you could then say some of those nuances, like, well, the select board members really to
Mhm.
prevent open meeting law potential violations. They generally won't, that there's a public comment period. If you would like to come and make these comments to the select board directly, you know, you can make the request to Kristen and would pass it on to me to have an agenda item on the select board. You know, you can give some of those generic stuff back. About again, how the black box operates so that people can have the right expectations, that if you need something fast, you should pick up the phone.
Yeah, and you can also, like, there are other things, like I just threw out an example, but you could put in like what specific departments handle or those types of things in the email too, if you chose to, and that can be helpful, because I know that a lot of the times the select board will get called for the town clerk's office, or the town
Right.
clerk's office will get called for. So that's another thing that could potentially be part of that if you wanted it to, but just
Right.
the basic what's there also works. It really
Um,
is.
If there was a
How you
way
wanna
to
do
do
it.
an autoresponder that didn't include internal recipients, because internally, you know, we get the building inspector report every month, and for him to get that autoresponder, or for, you know, the various emails the two of you send out to select board to us to also get the autoresponder all the time.
There is an option to do
Yeah, I
that.
thought so, because you can
Yes.
say externally, external.
That's
only.
right.
I know on the vacation responder, it asks you, which so I imagine this would be similar.
And it's just a Google
Well,
group, so you
yeah.
could also do an internal and
Yeah,
external Google
yeah.
group.
Mhm.
It's
Right.
not rocket science.
Yep. And that's how I do the autoresponders at my office, is I use the vacation responder on those sort of things. And there are various settings. Um,
Yeah, it also means everybody's getting the same thing and you don't
Right.
have to write it 18
well,
times,
or
the exact same thing.
the nature of the customer, that Sally's you responded to in 5 minutes, but David's you took 2 hours on. That must mean you hate David. And it's like, no, that I happened to be in a meeting when David's came in, and but we've all been in customer service, where that's the case. So an autoresponder, everyone gets the same thing and the same
Mhm.
piece, then you can figure out. I think that should be a motion, sort of directing the town administrator to do something to make sure it's not done in an individual request, but a select board request.
Since you asked.
Motion to put an auto response on the select board email.
Seconded.
And I think we're fine with the feedback for Kristen, you just writing something up, and we can obviously offer tweaks as it goes.
You'll get an auto response when
Right.
you send. So
Yeah.
then you-
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Trying to find a way to, I mean, we're gonna be out of here before 8 at the rate we're going here. We have to find out. Consider 1-day special pouring applications for 19 Carter. They have one for, and they're in sort of order of who's doing it, as opposed to, June 21st, June 28th, July 26th, August 2nd. Oh, no, there's a July 12th in there too, and an August 16th. So there's a total, 6 of them there?
Yes, but they actually go, and we confirmed this with Mass General Law, they go by the person who is taking out the
Right,
license, not the
right.
location.
Right.
So I think if you wanted to do them in pairs
I-
by the person, or do you still think we should vote them each individually?
I think because we put them in the agenda this way, they could just vote as listed in the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know we
there's
had that
6 of them.
discussion, I
To
forgot.
be fair for the people who are watching and don't have the agenda in front of them, there are 4 different alcohol providers. I wanted to call it Limoncello, but it's not.
IMLO.
It's IMLO, Wine Cellars, which has done them before.
Yes.
Clover Road Brewing, which Scrafton has done them before.
Mhm.
And Lost Shoe Brewing has done one before. I think Mass Brewing LLC is the only one I don't. Over the
There's
top of my
Sterling
head.
There's
Street.
Sterling Street,
Okay, Sterling
Yeah.
Street, yeah,
which I think they've done them.
right. And at a venue that does these pretty regularly during the summer months. And years ago, we had some random neighbor complaints about it. I've not heard anything in the last year or two about it.
Knock on wood, when I came in, that was one of the first things
Yeah.
that 19 Carter Board asked to meet with me about, and to make sure for that upcoming 2023 summer, there would not be any issues. I haven't received
Right.
any complaints since I started.
Well, I think they've jiggled
Good.
times around, they've jiggled parking around, they've worked with police, so there's
Done a
been a
really
lot
good
of
job.
discussion.
I think at
to-
one point there was a fence built, and
Correct,
and
yep.
there was just more conversations direct to the
Sure.
neighbors,
Yes.
and yeah. Is there any more questions? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the applications.
Seconded.
All in favor?
I,
say aye. Aye. The next agenda item, which is the annual town report policy and external communication policies. This is part of my attempt to take this wonderful select board policy manual that we have. And then Peg and I have it in paper. You might get these things electronically or,
I saw the actual thing for the first time today.
yep,
I did have a little minor complication maybe to
Uh-huh.
throw at you.
okay.
I've been playing with ChatGPT.
Uh-oh.
Oh, don't you love
I do.
ChatGPT? Oh,
So I think a lot of these things have been done based on what I have seen, but I thought it might be nice to have a plan and just make sure we've sort of gone through.
Mhm.
And then those are putting the policies through ChatGPT and asking them for improvement in format and.
Yep.
And I really liked, like, I don't care about the font so much, but I really liked the way it laid out the
Mhm.
policy. I think it's
Yep.
more readable and I mean, if you, sounds like you played with it, it's really.
Yep.
So it wasn't like it took 100 years to do it.
No, and they always ask questions at the end, would you like additional information on, so you can always keep refining
Yeah.
it.
Tell me about things that are unclear potentially, or that people might have questions on.
Yeah.
That was the one, like,
Um,
what might my board ask me? Which I thought was a really great question that Tim
Right.
had said to use. And I went, and they
Yeah.
gave me like, well, this might not be clear. They might ask this. And here's the answer to that. I mean, it literally gives you every piece, which is
And
phenomenal.
all I asked for here was basically a format
Mhm.
Yep.
and better framing.
Uh,
So,
As you say, I couldn't quickly find these as PDFs that I could. Because I told you at work, I put them in Google's LM and asked the question, not these, but my work policies. Are there inherent conflicts between any two policies? And I pointed out policies that one said, you must do this on even days, and it says you must do this on odd days. That's not the real example, but I mean, it's like, oh, we have policies that give contradictory stuff out there. Let's not have policies that have contradictory stuff in it.
I love the idea of making them searchable too.
Yeah.
So, we don't necessarily know all the fees, for example, for
Right.
everything off the top of our
Right.
heads. We did talk about putting it into something where Dee and I do have a lot of experience as well with Adobe
Mhm.
and creating something with tabs. So it's an electronic document that's searchable as well, which I think would work decently well.
much better than printed.
Correct.
Yeah.
that's-
I didn't even notice that. I'm not kidding, for the first like year and a half that
Yep.
I was here. And then I stumbled upon it and went, oh, the ones I have electronically are not all of them. So yeah, it would be very
Right.
nice to have them all.
In theory, when this was put together, this was all of them at the time.
Yep.
And they are actually put in groupings.
Yep.
And
Like I said,
my way was just.
I just had the
right.
two policies
Yep.
and I threw that ChatGPT.
Yep.
Give me a plan.
Yep. Well, my plan really is I think if every week we took
Pick
one
off
or two of these,
couple.
by the time we got to the end of the book, it would be time to get back to the beginning of the book.
Yep.
I'm hoping as we go through this, that, because for me, in some respects, the amount of time it would take to figure out the prioritization of them, we could be a quarter of the way through the book sort of anyway.
Okay,
Um,
I did though ask Dee today,
But-
and she has a request that we do permits and licensing and fees
Next.
first. Because she needs those things.
Well, those are the ones that affect our office. That's what we were talking
So-
about, which ones affect us on a daily.
There is a little bit of that I think would be
Mhm.
good to do.
Yeah, for me, top to bottom means you get all of them. I think if you do them piecemeal, you do 3 of these and
And
4 of those.
also,
and-
as we go through,
Right.
decide which ones need to be addressed on a yearly basis, which
Right.
one needs,
Yeah.
like, set a time for each one when you, and I
Mhm.
mean, I would be relatively consistent with that, but you don't have to do every one probably every
Oh,
year.
true.
So maybe we space out some of them. And as we hit them hard this time and do those things and, reformat and do those types of things. So that we don't have to do as much the next time and we can space out and pick. So that there are only, maybe we do a third of the policies each year.
No, I like it because when you go out to search for a policy. Oh, 20, nope, that's not, nope, wait, oh, next page. There's the latest one. So you've got to make sure that you're finding more current. And if somebody isn't paying attention, and just be like, but this is.
Well, it's not just that, even when we find the current ones, again, some of them are like, oh, this is 2019 and that department doesn't exist, or you.
Correct.
A policy names a person as opposed to the position, and like, well, that person doesn't work here anymore. What happens if this person left, or?
Mhm. I like them. I like short and sweet,
Mhm.
clear.
I did too.
Mhm.
One suggestion I would have,
Mm.
or we could do this way, and I don't know if this makes it easier. One of the things I've done when I've done this before is taken the policies and done a red line version. If you would let us know in advance which ones you want to work on, and then we could put the red line version in the select board meeting to be discussed at the next meeting. And you could also do a review, one session and an adoption the second session. That way you have time to give plenty of feedback and everyone can look at it.
What is your pleasure, Mr. Hawkins?
My intent is to get through all of them at some point. I don't care how we about get through them. As long as there's a policy to get through them. We have a policy in here, which is the temporary fiscal policy for 2021, which I am imagining by the time we get to it, probably could just be thrown away.
Yeah, and if
But
there-
its name at least implies to me that it can be thrown away. I haven't actually read that particular one, but I personally sort of hate a lot of policies because I generally believe by the time they're written, they're out of date. But you know, if we want to do permitting ones and fees ones first, if we want to have staff sort of do a crack at it and get us a red line version. So it could be that we, you know, we pick some and that 1 week we give, oh, I really wish this was shorter or longer. We do sort of high level comments. You take the high level comments, you create a red line version that we can then sort of approve at the following one. Gets us through it too.
Or if it's something that really needs to be completely reformatted, or we want to reformat them all in Chat GPT, then I could
I would
throw everything in
reformat-
there
I would
first.
reformat
Right.
them all.
to
Yeah,
reformat
yeah,
it, right?
I think, I mean, the quick layout I saw, I think is a great layout. I think once we have that, we could just decide all of them are going to be redone and that. It will also help if someone's going through which ones have been done and not, but I envision that there is a, you know, Google Drive folder that is publicly available that the most recent versions are always in. And when you go to replace it, you could put an archive somewhere else, but it's a place. And then as PDFs, you could throw them all to Notebook LM where people can ask it questions. Or search to their heart's content if they'd like to as well.
And I have no problem doing this because Tim has the pay version.
Yep.
I don't think you can put in files unless you have the pay version, unless you guys have the pay version. It's not
We don't have
expensive.
the paper.
It might be worth it for this sort of thing
No, but
and for drafting in.
But you're a
but-
Google Enterprise shop, and so you have
So-
Gemini access with your licenses that you have for that, and so you can ask Gemini the same sort of thing.
Okay,
And it really, I mean, it was really quick, like,
Yeah.
well, I've used it, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, the only thing that we need to make sure of is I'm looking at the official external communications that we've got the right emails, because I'm
yeah,
seeing.
there were
Yeah,
a
yeah.
couple
Yeah,
of actual
selectmen.
typos in there.
Yep.
Yeah,
I didn't change anything. because
which
I
is,
couldn't-
Right.
but it's nice
Right.
because it allows us to go through it and go, whoops.
Right,
Yeah, But I did, like, I looked at that, how I went down this path was I looked at that and went, that should be a table. And then I had it made
Right.
do a table, did a table for me, then I'm like, oh, why don't I just have it reformat the whole document?
Yeah.
That whole sort of thing, but that screamed for a table.
Oh, without a doubt.
I'm still new to all of this, but I have learned a bit about Chat GPT, thanks to you and Tim. Is Gemini as functional and user-friendly as Chat GPT?
they both have their pros and cons.
Okay, fair, like
Uh,
probably any other one,
Right,
right?
and I think both their free versions have more limits to it, and so I think you would find that the paid version of Gemini, which you have, is probably better than the free version of ChatGPT. There are definitely proponents of each one of them. It's like, you know, do you like Apples or
Yeah.
Macs or Windows or Linux, and it all depends on sort of both what you're doing, and there's definitely some personal preference in it.
Okay,
And the
That's
paid
okay.
version let me make a project so that they were all under the project, and then I uploaded the files and it
Right.
took that from the PDF file that was provided on the drive.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's.
And I don't know
basically-
the cost of the
it's- I
paid
think
version,
it's like $100.
right?
It's not much.
Because
This-
you might look at what the paid version is, because you'll find that once you get it, to be fair, I'm very skeptical at A as a whole, and I don't care much for it,
But
but
this it does well.
uh, But that once you start getting, you do find other uses for it that makes it, I personally, if you use it as an assistant for the type of things that you have used it for, is probably where its strength is. If you're asked to write a research paper for you, it will likely make some mistakes.
It tends to be good with the municipal stuff because there is so much out there
Right.
already for it to pull from.
That
So
makes
it's
sense.
very
Right.
good at pulling, like writing a letter that includes the Mass General Law for you. You know, you might want to verify it, but it will actually go out and find that stuff for you when you're trying to craft something.
Other municipalities that have their policies
Right.
online.
Right.
Yeah,
It
I mean,
will draw from all of that.
yeah, I mean, it only spits
Information.
back the quality of the information that it's looking from. So if it's,
Mm.
garbage in, it's garbage out. But,
Right.
this
And in
makes
this
it a lot
case,
easier to.
It
read
just
through.
used what was there and
Right.
we ordered it, because I didn't ask it to update it in any way or do anything like that.
It is $20 a month now for the Chat
Yeah.
GPT Plus, which is
Right.
the next, or you could pay 200 a month for something else, which
Right.
probably is way more than we need. But who knows?
And so I think I think if there's any sort of more broad instructions to give staff to get us something for next time, I'm assuming you can share this with them as their starting point, so they're not. And as a table, this is then easier to read, to find things
Mhm.
and it's easier to add other stuff, because I think I regularly talk about how to communicate things out there and to keep improving this list of places we put things. I thought that one sort of got lost. And then in the town, that's the town annual report. It mentions the town bylaw that says we mail the annual report to everybody in the town, which we do not do anymore. And so we likely, when we do fall town meeting, should do an amendment to that says make available to everybody in town. And have a fun debate about the pros and cons of mailing it to 3,000 people versus having stacks of it in a variety of places and the cost benefits of those.
So do you want us for the next meeting to go through the ones, or do you want to highlight the ones that you need or would like a focus on so that we can all look at it?
Yeah, I can do that. Sure. Yeah. I just thought maybe the ones that affect our office the most we could do first.
Okay.
I'll be fine with that.
I just want to make sure we're making it as easy as possible. for the
Absolutely.
office.
Okay.
And then so Chris, you and I will figure out sort of the right way to flow this through the select board, how far down the path you want to be. Like, because it could be at meeting one, you bring a list of, we'll pick a number 3 or 4. That we will then have read ahead of time and just give a quick feedback on. And then you can use that feedback and tools to come up with a new version for it for the following meeting that we would then vote on with maybe some small tweaks.
I think that would work.
Works.
Okay,
Nice job, Lisa.
yes, thanks. M, request to open negotiations with the town of Boylston about the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District Regional Agreement. I'm feeling my way through this process, but I think the start of the process is we request we'd like to have meetings with them to redo the agreement. I think then we would have more conversations both on our side about what we would like
Mhm.
change the rent areas. We probably have to appoint some sort of committee to work jointly with them to hash things out. But I thought the start was at least to start by sending a letter saying we want to open it up. I do have my notes from the budget hearings where the
Mhm.
school said, here's the things we would like to do. And I don't believe the schools, I think the school system is a result of this agreement. And so I don't think they necessarily are a formal party to the voting on it, but I think we'd be silly not to have them involved in it and make sure we're not making life crazy for them. And the things they would like to make things better, we also try to make better the best we can.
Do we involve FinCom in any of this, or just keep it at our level?
Did you have some thoughts?
I did. Oh, I'm looking at the letter that came from DESI because they sort of gave us a path forward and they recommend that the district administration, member town officials, and they reference the quote unquote committee, which I assume they mean the school committee because I can't think of anybody else. They're recommending, as well as the voters, obviously, have a shared understanding of what the agreement requires in terms of the budget process and the apportionment of costs and assessment to member towns. So when I think of who would be at the table, I would think it would be your town administrators, someone from each of your select boards, and somebody from the school committee as well as district administration. I don't know, I mean, finance, it could be possible. I just know the more people, sometimes you get
Yep.
involved, it gets a little bit convoluted. I wonder if you would start there. And then as perhaps the conversations get more financial focused and formula focused, then you bring them in. But DESI has also helped, offered to help us facilitate this process. So I think a good starting place too would be to reach out to them and say,
Yep.
who do you think we should have at the table? Because they're the ones who are really encouraging us to do this.
Yep. I mean, as it was pointed out, several times, this agreement was written before the region existed.
Mhm.
We've now run it for a while. We've definitely had
Issues.
some issues, I think, and I think from the conversations I've heard, the schools, the towns are on the same side of the same issues, that there's, I think much of the list, I think we're gonna find agreement on, so.
And I feel like you almost, one of the things you would want to put in there is we revisit this at
Regular. intervals.
Interval.
regular
Yep.
intervals. That seems like that should be part of
Yep.
the process. And if you don't have to do anything, that's great.
Right.
But then
It's
if you
noted.
do,
Yep.
it's.
Yeah.
There's a process.
Right,
Well, and I want to respect to the both sort of chain of command, but also the lines of communication
Mhm.
that we've established that have worked really well, I think, between myself and Al. So if it, you know, is amenable to the board, this letter actually came from DESI
Right.
to Al. He shared it with the towns. I would like to reach out to him and
Mhm.
say, our board would like to get started. You know, would you be able to bring in DESI? Get a recommendation who should be at the table, because I'd like to respect that. I
Yeah.
don't want to overstep him
No.
and reach out to Desi. So that is how I would recommend starting, is working with Al and getting him involved and seeing, you know, how Desi would like to proceed.
if I could just ask you that concurrently reach out to Boylston, so they
Boylston,
know
yep.
that we are starting down this path, because I'd be weird to go down the path and them say, no, we're not interested in negotiating. I think it would be, I'd be floored if that was their response, but I mean,
Sure.
You'll never
absolutely.
know.
No, I don't think any of us want to continue doing
But
what we've been doing. I don't think it's fun for anybody.
and then thinking that we would put then on, probably not the next agenda, but one out there a bit, an agenda where we would put together at least, as a select board, we think some of the issues
Mhm.
are in it that we'd like looked at and addressed. And we can figure out if that's a like more formal hearing where if members of the public want to come and make a comment about things they think should be addressed in it.
Mhm.
So be it.
And there are other agreements out there too, to look at. There are some of them
Yep.
applying from some of the local, regional.
I think that's still sort of the emotions for asking you to do something, that we should have a motion to reach out to Desi and Boylston to start the process of revisiting the regional agreement.
So moved. Well done.
Second,
There you go.
All in favor?
Aye.
July 1st, right? We'll have the new agreement ready in place.
100%. You mean July 1st, 26?
Yeah,
right?
right.
Okay, got it.
yeah,
And it's funny, I can't remember how far it's, but the discuss fiscal year 26 town administrator goals. And I gotta change folders here for a second.
And in addition to putting in the FY25 goals, many of which were multi-year goals, I did also, this was part of my thinking in adding the upcoming projects to
Yep.
the town administrator report.
Didn't you give us a more updated list? Because I'm looking at things like,
I put the wrong one in.
for your review, you gave us a much bigger
Oh.
color coded. This one, yeah, is
um,
dated what? April?
No, I thought that was, this is April 28th. I thought this was the most up to date because the rest of them were multi-year
Okay.
projects. I can double check, but I think this was the one, and that was also why I included those key accomplishments as well. Since I had done it as part of the evaluation process, I thought it might be helpful for Lisa to see it as well, just because there are, FY 24 was much more straightforward. FY 25, there were a number of other derailments, if you will, that got in the way. So,
Well, and the thing is too, is that on some of these, to me, they're not your goals, like the radio project phase, that's on Chief Shartner, I mean, so, and the public safety, that's Chief Shartner and Fire Mike type of thing. So to me, these aren't your specific goals. You have a part in them, but you should not be driving them.
No, but as town administrator, neither the police chief or fire chief report to us.
Mm.
And so for those goals to get done, they sort of flow through Kristen.
maybe what I need in addition to the project is a column on specific TA action items. So like for upstairs, doing all the procurement is my
Right.
responsibility. So maybe making it a little bit more clear as to what I do.
Or maybe just restructure your notes section instead of adding on another column, just rephrase that.
Sure. And I think as Scott and I talked a little bit about this was sort of a first kind of look, so you guys can think for the next meeting about what you might like some of these to be. And taking into account, also that list that's in the TA report, because those are pretty urgent items that need to get done. But again, those are all, pretty much everything I do is working with other people. So
Right.
it's hard to say it's just me, but like you said, I can be more specific in the notes.
So do you want us to come back at the next meeting with some ideas?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so it is the combination of, what we think we're wanting to be adding for the coming year, what potentially has been on this list for a bit that we think is no longer a priority coming off, although nothing screams
Correct.
like that at the moment. Luckily, the things that she's highlighted in green get to come off because they're done.
Yep.
As opposed to just deprioritized, they've been completed, and so. But yeah, we'll have to get a few other sort of the things that are out there. I think the policy. Actually, the stuff that was, again, as you point out, the things that were at the end of your TA report is a good starting of list of things that you think are out there, and that if we agree, we should make sure they're part of the goals.
So I can take this and add in some of those items and have a draft updated one
Mhm.
for the next meeting on the 23rd, and then we can add in other ones or remove as the board sees fit.
One of the things that I'd like us to explore is the general volunteerism and civic engagement. And where sort of a project along those lines go. The people who say they're trying to volunteer and they feel it goes into a black hole, the committees that have holes on them, that how do we sort of get out there? Because it's not going to be, again, Kristen and Dee are sort of beating the bush to get volunteers to come onto the committees, but there
Mhm.
should be a system where after they get up, they get on it. And how we sort of, I think, diversify it. There's still this sort of feeling that despite two of us on this board, not multi-generational sort of
Mhm.
people in town, the feeling that, you have to be in the town multi-generations before you're worthy of stepping up, and that's not the case. We've had some great conversations at town meetings with people who it's their first town meetings.
Correct.
We've had people at the housing trust who came to stuff who were interested in a particular topic, but when you chat to them more, their interests are broader and can do other things. And so how do we continue to sort of broaden that? So there are future, select board members and future FinCom members and school board members and other folks out there.
Yeah, and I think in general, one part of that, and it seems to be, there are several areas that we don't close the loop very well. And volunteer applications would be one of those where the process starts and the loop doesn't get closed, but it's not the only one.
Right.
I think there's in general sort of room for improvement there, and I know it's very amorphous, but,
Yeah, and so I think if we end up with a goal of trying to find that to make it a little bit more concrete out there. Because I think what also happens on some of these committees is they get a vacancy and it's a friend or a neighbor of someone who's already on the committee who joins them. Which is fine, because those are, but they end up with this sort of one little, even when it's the most hardworking folks, a click from one area, you don't get as much sort of diversity out there. Which at some point you've tapped everybody in that circle for that particular committee, and they struggle. I don't know how we, during TA report or our question period, we highlight a committee or two that has some openings for the people who watch all of this, but we could do some more posts.
it's the same thing as the communication policy
Right.
we just did.
Yep.
Just,
Correct.
but a lot of times people don't even know, did people, I mean, granted, there were people waiting to step into those slots on conservation because they
Right.
have that sort of associate thing going on, but most there aren't.
Mhm.
And probably nobody even knew that there was an opening.
Right.
And it was filled.
Mm.
And it was great because they had people there who were
Right.
participating
go.
and interested already, but most committees are not like that.
And I'm sure that was just sort of on my list, although I think it's on the list because I think you pinged me about that before you ran, about something that we should be looking at more, so.
I don't care.
Yeah, I
I
know.
don't care who gets credit.
I
I
know.
just want it done.
Yep.
Agreed.
I think that takes us now to board questions and liaison updates.
Is that gonna be a next
Yeah,
agenda
it
item?
occurred to me that I wrote my note here is that I was
Okay.
gonna put it on this agenda is to start assigning committees and.
Yeah,
Did
and
it?
I didn't touch anything because as far as I know, you didn't assign me anything.
Right, no,
I
I've not
have
assigned
no-
you
I
anything.
will let you know, I have no problem taking Chris's if that's how you want to do it. I would also like to float, I would like to be an election liaison because we
Right.
have a lot of changes happening in that area and
Yep.
I've done a lot of work there, so I think
Mhm.
it would be helpful to make sure that information is happening and we start having some policies
I-
on our end.
And I think I, for one, could be better informed about all the little processes. I think I learn a lot of new things about the nuances of them. I mean, it's not just people show up on the day and cast ballots. It's all the
No.
prep work for it and the education work for it and
And
all
a
the work
lot of
Eloise
it
does.
is folks
do-
that we
Right.
manage as a select board. It's
Right,
police and fire, they all have a role.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And we know really early when these dates are, so I think a process similar to like the town meeting
Right.
process where we let people know early, so it's on the calendar, what facilities needs to do, what. And especially as we start talking about another location, this is gonna become even more important, because if we don't tell them
right,
we need the space, we're not gonna have
right.
it.
It's gonna take coordination to
It's gonna
actually
take
move,
coordination.
to move it to a new
move it.
location, yeah.
And as I started thinking about your request at the last meeting of opening the dialogue around moving voting to BMS.
Yeah,
With elections, I think it would be really helpful to have an elected select board member work with me and work
Yeah.
alongside of me with that
Yeah.
as well. I think that would have a greater impact.
And I would have asked, I love this
Yeah.
stuff and I've spent a lot of time trying to sort of modernize and.
Yeah. Anyway,
So.
I think we found another goal that needs to get added to the list.
Write it
Yeah.
down. What do you have for updates?
We're gonna probably have to go back to talking about the buildings again on the building list. It's part of your ARPA stuff, but we had some preliminary conversations about the old highway barn. That we were sort of holding off, waiting for this space stuff. I also trying to figure out in my brain, giving the Legion Hall to the Housing Trust. I'm trying to not have too many commentary. Several people pointed out that they thought there was a better use for that. And I'm wondering how we tap whether or not there is a better use of the building. I don't think there is, but I want to honor the people who felt differently than me at that meeting. That how do we Is there, do we find that some of the people who are staunchly believing there's a better use and form a small committee for it? Do we do a public hearing saying, look, we're thinking of giving this to and anyone who has any ideas of other uses for that building that I think meets the same things with the housing trust. No ongoing tax dollars, matter of fact, it's ongoing tax revenue, no tax dollars going into any renovation or changes because the housing trust is going to use funds that are already sitting around restricted to just doing housing related stuff. And preserves the historic nature of the building. Those are, I think, the three things. And if someone has a better idea of how you accomplish those three things in some other way that's not giving it to the housing trust, I'd be open to it.
I have a recommendation potentially.
Yep.
I don't know if we want to do it on the 23rd, only because that
Yeah.
agenda has a couple of hearings, but whichever meeting we decide, my recommendation would be to put Legion Hall specifically on the agenda.
Mhm.
And there is a resident group that has contacted me over the past, since basically May of last year and it
Yep.
being on in December. Reach out and let them know that it will be on a board agenda, and I would be very surprised if they wouldn't be able to get the word out.
Yep.
Because I know they've been working with other concerned residents, and I
Yep.
think that would be a way to facilitate a dialogue around it and bring it to the public's attention through a select board meeting.
And I can just tell you from the Housing Trust meeting, the Housing Trust would like to bring this forward again.
Mhm.
They would like to bring it forward in fall.
Mhm.
I thought they would want to wait until spring. They want to do it in fall. They don't feel that there was an adequate discussion,
Mhm.
because everybody was tired and it was towards the end. And we did get a pretty good
It was a majority,
majority.
almost 60%. You just needed
Um,
66% for it to pass.
Yeah, and certainly if we could talk about those other things, but just, I'm gonna say, just looking at those other things that were brought up. There's not enough space there. The recommendation for a senior center is 4 to 5 square feet per individual who is in that age range. So if you take about a third of Berlin.
We need
you're
a
looking
con-
at a
we need a con-
5,000 square, but it is
we need an
1,500 square
apex.
feet.
Yeah.
And there's no parking and all these other
Well, a
things.
senior
but-
center would take significant amount of tax dollars on an
Yeah,
ongoing basis to
significant.
staff and
So I
operate.
think those are things that we can certainly
Mhm.
address,
yeah.
but yes, by all means, let's try. If people want to spend. I don't think
Yeah.
you can do it at that building. I think
Right.
it's another discussion, but.
Yeah.
Similar, let's definitely talk about it. And they also, I asked for permission or to have on the next
Yep.
agenda to get permission to perk it. The Housing Trust did want to perk it because if it doesn't perk, then
There's no point.
everything's off the table. So they wanted to go ahead with that, and then, the issue with the conservation restriction where we can't hold the conservation restriction and it is the same thing with the historical restriction. So we could not put a historical restriction on unless that property is transferred to somebody else. So if we were to sell that, we cannot put a historical restriction on it. It would have to be transferred to the trust or transferred to the historical society in order to make that happen. So that's another piece of the puzzle that we weren't aware of until recently.
Oh, so the trust can.
The trust can, if you
Ah,
transferred
okay.
it to the trust, or if you transferred it to the historical society, they could
Just,
then
That's
do it, but the town cannot
interesting
hold them
nuance.
both.
Because this is our River Run conundrum.
Right,
It's
so-
the, it's the
so maybe the
exact
trust
same
wants
thing.
River Run
No,
for a day.
And the
Planning board has talked
But-
about putting cottage housing up there.
um,
That could be a type of affordable housing.
Yeah.
Workforce.
but we also said we would continue and do the
Yep.
groundwork with historical
Yep.
to move the historical restriction forward as far as it can move.
Right.
Because we felt that that's important,
Yep.
no matter what happens, to see if there's a way to do that. So yeah, it was folks were actually really, really excited about, trying to
Mhm.
figure out how to make this work.
Online, there's been, this is a new topic.
Alright.
Online, again, there's been some more conversations about those fiscal year 24 demand letters.
Yes.
With some comments that the treasurer's office tax letter was not helpful in helping it getting resolved. They wouldn't take the money when someone came in to pay it. Because
Oh,
the
okay,
bill
I
was
didn't
too old,
See
but the
that
bill's
comment.
not too old. The bill just went out. And so,
Actually, can I speak on that?
Yes, absolutely.
Because I did send that to
Right.
the treasurer collector
Yep.
and asked her about it. And she came back and said that that was a resident who has a login for Unipay so that she gets a notice from Unipay when there is a bill available.
Mhm.
And they sent her the bill, same last name, but the wrong bill, and she paid it. And that's why the assistant indicated we couldn't help her. She had to go to Unibank for that because she was looking to find out
Okay.
to have that rectified, but we couldn't do it because she actually paid someone else's bill.
Okay.
That's the problem
Thank
with
you.
fake book. You never get the entire story.
Right.
There is, there
No.
is a lag time,
Yeah.
so there is some validity to the confusion
Mhm.
because, and
Yeah.
I wanted to nail down exactly what this was, and I meant to mention, I'm glad you asked me, I had right here, excise tax issue. So what happens is we don't send the day that taxes are due, the file to the deputy collector that says, please go and send demand notices to everybody now, because otherwise we can't clear somebody until those funds come into our account.
Hmm.
So when they clear our account, then we're able to mark them as paid, as clear, nothing goes to the registry, et cetera. That is often a lag of a few days, especially if it goes through Unipay or it's a check. So there's a little bit of a lag there. So what we do is we wait until a few weeks after the due date to send the file to the deputy collector. However, once the deputy collector gets the file, there's a lag there between when they post the file and we give it to them. So it takes them several days. So if somebody comes in during that like 1 week window and pays, it's not getting picked up and they're going to get a demand notice even though they've already paid. It's a
Right.
timing issue.
Right.
There should not be a large amount of people having this issue, but I understand that there are some people impacted by it. We certainly apologize. I know we've been trying to work with people. There have been some people that are very, very upset, and we are doing our absolute best to try to assist them. I would just ask for a little bit of patience, and if folks come in, please just try not to get so angry that we can't explain it to you, because that becomes a little bit challenging. I know that they've been having a tough time across the hall with some pretty upset folks. And it really helps if you can kind of just keep cool a little bit so that we have an opportunity to explain to you what's going on and clear things up, because there is a little bit of a window where things could have crossed in the mail. So,
Well, and the 24 excise taxes bills went out late because of staffing issues we had earlier in the year, which also made this a little weirder. And I also know from previous stuff, even time on FinCom, is that the state laws around what you can and can't do with payment of tax bills is tight. In other words, they can't waive things the state doesn't let you waive, and they can't
No.
take it 5 minutes late, and other things that are not very customer friendly, but are still the state law nonetheless. For people who got, so this affects me personally, but got bills for vehicles they don't own and didn't own when the bill originally came out, and file, how long does it take to learn that someone has given you an abatement that you're not really going to have to pay it?
so if there is an I don't know the exact time period. I can get that for you, but obviously we can adjust an abatement if it's a vehicle that you do not own. That is a different
Right,
circumstance than
yeah.
not having paid on something that you do own.
Right.
So that can and will be adjusted. But to your point, because there's no way for us to prove that you didn't receive that
Right.
demand or that bill in the mail, and we have had some postal issues, as we know. Mass General Law does specifically say the onus is on the taxpayer to pay whether they receive the bill or not, which
Yep.
I understand is completely frustrating to people. I don't like it. I don't like having to tell people that, because that just infuriates people, and I get it. But unfortunately, the law is written that way because there really is no way for us to track. I mean, it's unfortunately very easy to say, I didn't get the bill. You could have accidentally thrown it away. It could have flown away in the wind. I mean, there's no way for us to prove that you didn't receive it. So that's why the law is written that way.
And we're not requiring people to pay the bill before they file an abatement.
Sometimes it
Well-
is better for them to pay it and
Yes.
get the abatement back, because if they're bringing it in and it's about to be past due,
Right.
they will still get the demand
Right.
and interest.
Correct.
So there are times when we do say it would be better if you paid your bill and then filed your abatement and get a full refund. or a refund based on the date that you canceled your plates.
Right.
Thank you.
Is it possible to maybe put together a back on this or something? So that rather than having to explain it every single time, people can look.
They do have a couple of handouts
Is-
at the
is
treasurer
there- okay,
collector's
so there
office
is
that
something
are
that-
informational for people when they,
About what's going on and.
That's my list for tonight.
Okay, let's see, Concom, they had mentioned that they're having some beaver issues on Allen Road, which is causing lots of flooding. I know that they were going to reach out to Fred, because I know there's a whole process. You can't.
They're
You can't
protected.
just take them away.
Correct, so.
And it's about $800 per beaver to have a trapping agency come in. We
Yeah.
looked into this in last.
So they were working
so-
at that. They have some really cool video. It does look like a little waterfall over there, but again, it's all because of the rain
Mhm.
as well. The Concom is going to do a bird banding, resume sometime this month. Very cool. Recommend if you can go, highly go. I did the owl one, very cool. But Maddie's doing the bird one. Energy is all set to go tomorrow, and well, yeah, you're going to Holy Cross, so we get that night back, and then rec is next week. I will talk to them, I will remind them about, just talking to Fred with that and making sure that those bleachers get anchored down. Question, do you have any status from FinCom? Did they meet with the interested candidate last week, and what are they doing with that person?
They did. We heard back from that, the candidate, Sheena Bryan today, that they are interested in the position. It was something that she had wanted to chat over with her family and given all the information, but they had a great, I would say almost an hour-long discussion with her. And I did ask the chair what the next steps were. And I haven't even opened this email yet because it came through this evening, but hot off the press. If you give me a moment. It looks like the FinCom chair is requesting that we send the notice to the moderator, which is the first step in the process of the FinCom potentially making an appointment. We did this with if you recall, Stan Rogolinski when he resigned. So Scott has put a letter together dated today that says, "Dear Barry Eager, the Finance Committee is writing to inform you that a Finance Committee member position remains vacant for greater than 60 days. Julie Malik resigned her position in February of 2025. So that is the first step in the process. They are meeting again on June 16th. And I have asked them if this is something they would like to put on their agenda. So we will go from there.
And the other question, I watched the May 27th meeting of the COA and got caught off guard a little bit when they said that the 19 hours a week that the van driver is going to be guaranteed. So I know I had that look. I had that look and I had that head tilt that my concern is, and I know it's a chicken and egg. You can't get a driver because people don't sign up. People won't sign up, therefore you can't get a driver. I get that. But where they're saying 19 hours guaranteed, they were talking about that there's only they averaged it for the past forever months, and there were only 8 rides a week. So if you're doing only 8 rides a week, but you're guaranteeing 19 hours, what is that person going to be doing? Because I'm really not in favor of forking out money for someone to sit and wait for a phone call. And it kind of leads into the old highway barn, because that's where the COA van sits. And if we're hiring a driver, the drivers, does this mean that our agreement with MWRA, Jim,
Yep, the grant.
is null and void? I mean, there were
Nope.
just so many questions, but again, I think my brain just went when they said, oh, it's a guaranteed 19 hours. I'm thinking, when did that happen? And who approved that? And
Well,
why?
all postings have to go through us, right?
All postings go through the town administrator's office. I did have
Oh.
a conversation with Melissa about posting for guaranteed hours. We did not set a number of hours, but the conversation was, the problem is we can't get a per diem van driver. We've been advertising for one.
Mhm.
So if we were able to set a specific schedule, then the chances of getting a part-time driver increase, since we were unable to get a per diem despite multiple advertisements. Also, if you were able to set a schedule, then people know when you're available, they can set their appointments. Like you said, it is a bit of a chicken and an egg thing. I don't know how else to do it. Given the fact that town meeting did allocate the funds for the position, I am totally open to suggestions. It was just discussed that there might be a little bit of pain in the beginning. Can we use them for other things that are going on in the office in between in the beginning while we're getting some signups? It has nothing to do with MWRTA and their grant. That's specific to Hudson and Marlboro. This would be looking at other areas that are not being served right now in Worcester County.
But that would require, to me at least, a new job description, because if the job description says, oh, I'm just gonna drive people around. But yet Lisa comes to me and says, oh, Peg, I could really do some filing while you're waiting. I'd be like, no, I'm driving people around. Because there may be people who'll be like, absolutely, sure, not a problem. And there may be the people waiver.
Yep.
So
So it was just a preliminary discussion, but yes, nothing had been decided or signed off on or approved. I don't know, I didn't see the meeting, so I don't know the nature of the conversation. All that I had discussed was the possibility that we might have to post it for set hours.
tune in about the 30-minute mark, because the way that I took it was that it's 19 hours guaranteed.
Okay,
And I'm
let me
like,
look into that.
what? So I'm thinking that the job description needs to be revised, which means it needs to go back to personnel for their input as to what can and can't be done.
Which day was this on?
May 27th. Yeah, go about half hour in.
My other concern would be if we were only getting 8 rides to begin with, and half of them are now covered by
Well, they didn't break,
WRTA.
and that was the problem. They didn't break it down to say, these are those rides. They had talked about, well, we'll just take rides from the Neshoba neighbors people, and I'm thinking, well, have you talked to them about it? Because the Neshoba neighbor people, sometimes they'll drive you into Boston. Well, that van's not going into Boston, so that's not a valid statement to say, we'll take those. So to me, it's a little cart before the horse, that there's not a lot of information. And I know that she was sending out a survey. I don't know if it's gone out yet, but what are people really looking for? Or are we just assuming we think that they're going to sign up for the bus? So let's find a person to sit around for 19 hours if no one's asking.
Get some more information. Like I said, it was a
If
very
we weren't
preliminary.
worth asking specifics on
Yep.
the survey too about.
That we
bus
talked about
versus
adding that
footage.
into it as
Yeah,
well on van hours and locations.
Yeah.
Has the survey gone out?
Let me double check with her. I know it was supposed to go out, but I believe there was a printing issue where we couldn't print it on the copier here, so she was getting a quote from Clinton Offset. I did not talk to her today, so let me check in with her.
Yeah, I would just like a little bit more detail before that gets pulled. And especially regarding the van,
Mm.
where we're thinking of maybe not having the old highway barn. What do we now do with an exposed van with that?
And this is gonna be a challenge, right? Because the select board had a plan that they recommended to the FinCom, that FinCom ultimately recommended to town meeting, that town meeting rejected.
Mhm.
And they did add funding to the account. That doesn't mean that the select board does not have to say over how that funding
Right.
gets expended, but I don't know that we can't tell them they can't have van drivers, or that we would get rid of the van, because those are necessary to fund that line item. But I understand that there needs to be more dialogue and
Mhm.
conversation about how do we go about this? And if it is a change in position or change in personnel, that obviously has to go back to the personnel committee.
Right, but there are
So-
regularly line items that are passed at town meeting that we don't spend. We did not spend an expense line item for the animal control because we ended up not contracting. We found a different way of doing it. We kept the animal control officer.
That is true. I would argue though that yes, if we find a different way to do it, I would say, I don't know that we could just say we're not going
Yeah.
to do it.
Right, because also they were also talking about, obviously, the van drivers need to be CPR and first aid certified, so that's gonna take conversations with Fire Mike. If Berlin's gonna do it, or are we sending people somewhere else to get certified? And when was the last time the van was started? And is it still working, or has, little mice decided to find homes in the various wires? And the upkeep, I'd like to know the upkeep of the van, tires, oil changes, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that all factors into a van driver coming back. That's great. I can pay Scott 19 hours, but if the van breaks down continually and I'm forking out $300, $400, $500 or more.
We just allocate wages. We didn't allocate anything for maintenance, or
Well,
how does that work?
Their original budget had both that in it and in their expense line item had to taking care of the van. We also, though, now as a town, have a vehicle maintenance fund.
Okay,
Don't we?
We do, but they typically use their donation account and or the formula grant for larger repairs and maintenance is my understanding, if there wouldn't be availability in the expense line item for it.
Okay.
Routine maintenance is one thing and
Yeah.
there is money allocated in the expense line item for that, but if it were to be something that blew apart of
Yep.
whatever, I know that in the past, the donation account has been used.
I just wanted to make sure, because that line item was sort of randomly added back in there, that all the pieces had gone with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like a little bit more data, and I know that's one thing that we asked Melissa from the very beginning. We need numbers to help justify instead of, oh, this is a great idea, go. Definitely want to see numbers and where those 8 rides are going.
I'll have to watch it. They say 8 rides.
It
I mean, we haven't
averaged-
had anyone since.
It averaged out over a certain time period that they
Okay.
have, and I think they cut it off in February. Or
Like cut off
March.
when they stopped having a driver.
Yeah, so they're going back on historical data, but again, can they look and see how many times people called and said, I need to go to, can you hook me up?
We have a small precedent on hiring someone with the idea that there's an expectation of where things get to. We did that for the rec. I wasn't a fan of hiring those rec folks, but the argument was if we have them, the rest will show up.
Correct.
That now rec has a revenue line that goes with it. It's easy to go against. This is not a revenue producing position.
Right,
We could easily, if we decided to hire it, say that to keep this job beyond 90 days, or maybe it's longer than that, a reasonable time period that's not forever. If there's not X number of rides, then it's just not worth it.
correct.
So I will work with Melissa on this and ask
Yep.
her to work on it. This is gonna obviously have to involve some of my
Right.
involvement in it
Mhm.
too, because it is budgetary
Yep.
related. So I'm just putting that out there
Yep.
because I have been told I've spent too much time on some COA matters. So I want to make it clear that if this is what the board is asking me to
Yeah.
do, this is gonna take some time for me to work on it and it will take away from other things.
Yeah, I mean, I just like a plan. That's all.
She was last in front of us in February. The department head schedule for fiscal 26 is not out yet because we didn't have a meeting agenda schedule until a half hour ago. But she's probably due to come back relatively soon. I don't know if much more, I don't think it takes much of Kristen's time. Melissa should be ready to talk about what
What
her
their plan
solution
is.
is for the driver when the next time she presents, and that I don't think that we post the job until such time. And I'm expecting that we're not asking her to wait till like November. I'm expecting in July, and if it doesn't happen, maybe we make it an end of July meeting that we talk about what's next for that.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously know that what we were doing was not working.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
And the idea was that we were gonna give her $10,000 or $12,000 in the expense line to figure out
Correct.
over this year what would work. And so,
Right,
we
would it
have
be
to figure-
monthly vouchers to say, here,
Yeah.
Lisa, I know you need
Yep.
the bus, so here's $20.
But I can't do that with a wages line item.
right.
That's the
Correct.
challenge.
Yep.
But yeah, no, so, no, if you want to pull her up and
Yep.
then hopefully she'll come back with a detailed plan.
Okay, let's look to July.
And then that takes that burden back off you.
Yep.
That's now hers.
Appreciate that.
Better.
That's all I got. That's all I could fit on my sticky.
Okay.
So we're good. Mm-hmm.
If we're done, is there a motion to adjourn?
No, I'd like to stay.
Okay,
My computer's
Motion
dying.
to adjourn.
Seconded.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
See you in a couple weeks.
Go.